Okay, the 4-point analysis of the self. Now, you'll find this in Lama Tzong Khapa's Lamrim. You find it in Chandrakirti's supplement, no, well, certainly his auto commentary on the supplement to the Middle Way. So it's in the text, especially Lama Tzong Khapa's Lamrim. And the 4-point analysis is an analysis to find the mode of existence or non-existence of the self. Okay, first up, disclaimer. I hesitated in doing this and trying to explain this. I honestly find this meditation quite difficult. And one could legitimately ask, have you realized the selflessness of the person? And the answer is no. And then the response would be, well, who are you to explain it then? And I would say, fair point. However, I haven't any other realizations of the Lamrim either, and I frequently get asked to explain those. Not that that's a great excuse, but I digress. So I used to shy away from these topics, any of the wisdom topics, and what I said to my teacher was, I haven't got realizations. And he said, but you've read the text, you've studied the text. And that's true. So in response to the question, who the heck are you to explain this? I'm no one. I'm honestly no one. I'm nobody making a YouTube video. I just have the luxury of having been able to study for 9 years. And if that study can be of benefit to someone, then better that than there not being explanations. And those of us who have had the opportunity to study just hiding under a rock saying, no, 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 I can't possibly, I don't have realizations. No, 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 no. You know, is that helpful? So that's my upfront disclaimer. And I should add to that, there is a very nice description of how to do this meditation in Yangtze Rinpoche's book called Practicing the Path. So honestly, go by that. That's what I would say. First of all, you really want to get your head around this, or any of the wisdom topics of the Lamrim, Yangtze Rinpoche's book, Practicing the Path, is a fantastic place to start. Nevertheless, in case it may be of benefit, having read Yangtze Rinpoche's book and Lama Tzong Khapa's work and some of Chandrakirti's text, let's see if we can get into this. Okay, the 4-point analysis. So what is this? The 4-point analysis is a way of analyzing to see how the self exists, or more importantly, doesn't exist. And this is a tool used by the Prasangikas for the yogis who have the merit and purification, to arrive at the realization that when they search in the way suggested by this analysis, they discover that the self doesn't exist in the way they believed. Why would someone do that? Because, Chandrakirti says, the yogis have understood that the source of all their suffering is the grasping, the mistaken grasping at a self of persons, grasping at it in a distorted way, in a way that it doesn't exist. So they've obviously got some wisdom already, realizing that they're misconceiving the self, they're grasping at the I as existing in a way that it doesn't. And actually, even before you get to the Prasankika school, the lower schools, the Sautantrika school, Dharmakirti in his Pramanavartika, which is from the perspective of the Sautantrika, he says something that I think all 4 schools support. He says, when we misconceive a self, then there is other. On the basis of that, we generate disturbing emotions, attachment, aversion, pride, jealousy, and so on. We generate these and then make all kinds of mistakes. You know, an entire skyscraper of self-created drama and suffering ensues based on the root mistake. Therefore, so that's what Dharmakirti says. And Chandrakirti in his work, in his commentary on his own supplement to the Middle Way, it says, therefore, yogis who've understood this, who've really understood that, they first try to refute that intrinsically, inherently existent self. Okay. Okay. The way the Prasangikas posit the distortion of the self is different to the Sautantrikas. Okay, so let's get back to Chandrakirti. But anyway, so Chandrakirti would say the yogis, having realized that the self is the root of all faults, all suffering, root of keeping going in samsara, they will try to refute the self, the self that doesn't exist in the way that it appears, that doesn't exist in the way we grasp and hold on to it. That's what they're aiming for. Why? Because they want to uproot the root of samsara. They're like, I am done with samsara. Thank you very much. I want to free myself and then free others. So he says they first try to negate that wrongly conceived self. What's one way to do that? The 4-point analysis. Okay. So the first point in the 4-point analysis is what? The first point that the yogis would do is to try to generate an appearance, a notion, a similitude of this thing called inherent existence. So inherent existence, according to the Prasangika, is non-existent. It doesn't exist. And so what the yogi tries to do is think, okay, they try to generate some similitude of it. So we grasp at things as existing in a way they don't. So what the yogi tries to do is generate a sense of that in his mind. So how would he begin? It's recommended that a good way of generating this sense of self, this inherent intrinsic self, is to, almost in an exaggerated way, generate the sense of graspable self we have when we are offended, attacked, criticized, angry, fearful. At those times, there's a real graspable that we hold onto, and we either want to protect, bash somebody over the head with it, squash somebody with it. There's something to hold on to. And throughout the meditation, the yogi is trying to hold on, because with one hand, he's sort of holding on to this concept, this notion, this conceived object of inherently existent self. And with the other one, he's holding a torch, searching in the aggregates or outside to see if that exists. Which is why it said, excuse me, well, ideally one should have a correct meaning generality image. One should have a correct mental image of this object of grasping, because otherwise, Shantideva says, if you don't bring to mind well the object of negation, the thing in the way we grasp at it, if you don't bring that to mind well, then you won't be able to generate the wisdom that discovers that isn't there. And I think Lama Tzong Khapa is the one who says, doing that job of making the similitude, the meaning generality, the image of this intrinsic existence self, making that dawn to the mind well, is the biggest part of the job. So the yogis in their cave, they try to do that. That's the first point. Generate this image, this notion, this findable, graspable self identity. Then the second point. The second point is called ascertaining the pervasion, meaning that you say, okay, if the self exists in that way, there are two possibilities. It is either one with the basis of designation, my psychophysical aggregates, body, mind, feeling, and so forth. It's either one with those or other than that. Because in the entire universe of phenomena, there's everything, okay? Let's say there's the entire universe of phenomena, everything. And within that, there are the 5 aggregates and everything else. So if the self exists intrinsically, inherently, it's either inherent one with the aggregates or inherent other. There's no other possibility because those possibilities comprise every possibility. That's point 2. Okay. The third point is investigating to see whether let's imagine we've correctly, imagined, conjured up the object of negation. So the third job is to see whether that grasped at intrinsic inherent identity, I-ness, is found inherently graspable, findable in the way we believe in the aggregates. That's the point number 3. And there are various ways that can be done. So one would keep that in mind and then say, this identity, is it one with the aggregates, all 5 of them? If yes, Lama Tzong Khapa says, Chandrakirti says, if yes, then the self would be 5 because the aggregates are 5. And in the same way that we have an eye consciousness, an ear consciousness, a taste consciousness, all of those would be the self if the self is one with the aggregates. As many parts as there are, the self would be one with all of them. And that's problematic. We've got lots of parts and all of them are the self. And then we might say, well, no, all of the aggregates together are the I, the self, intrinsically. And that is problematic because the self, the aggregates are produced dependently, dependent on causes and conditions and parts. So to then say that they are one and inherent one with the identity I in, image of intrinsically existent self, to then say that they have become one is difficult. And Nagarjuna in Fundamental Wisdom says, if there is no, okay, so let's say we're talking about the essentially intrinsically existent I. If that essence does not exist at the moment of the causes and conditions, how can it exist at the time of the result? And equally, if there is an inherently existent result, what did the causes and conditions do to produce it? So if we are saying the I is inherently one with the aggregates and the aggregates are one, then it's also a little bit, and another point Lama Tzong Khapa says, it's like saying action and agent are one. So it's like saying that the possessor of parts and the parts are intrinsically one. Like the horse and his legs are one, just one thing. And thinking in this way, if we start thinking that the part possessor and parts are one, then Chandrakirti says it's a little bit like saying that the pot and the potter are one. And there's a very practical analysis actually given by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which is very nice, much, very nice analysis to do. And he says, if we think that the I is one with the body, like we say, I am sitting, we should ask ourselves, why do we say, I am sitting? And the answer is, we say, I am sitting, just I, in dependence on the body sitting. I am walking. Why do we say I am walking? The body is walking, and the I is just designated in dependence on that. I like that analysis. It's from virtue and reality. It's quite nice, and you can get your head around that bit. And then the same would be with thinking. I am thinking. Why do we say I am thinking? Just I designated on the fact that the mind is having thoughts. So to say I is one with the aggregates is problematic. Now, some people might say, okay, well, the I is one with the mind. And then there's a discussion, especially in Chandrakirti's auto commentary. Well, okay, if the I is intrinsically one with the mind is just a series of moments of consciousness. So if the I is intrinsically one with the mind, is it intrinsically one with this moment of mind? With the continuum? If the continuum is intrinsically existent, you should be able to find it in and amongst the moments of mind. but the continuum is nothing more than the sum of the parts, so it can't be an intrinsically existent continuum. So then the question is, okay, so do we say that one intrinsically existent moment that is one with the I follows another intrinsically inherently existent moment that is one with the I? So we're positing a succession of inherently existent I, one with the mental consciousness. Chandrakirti investigates that. He says, if we assert things as existing in that way, then it's like positing two different mental continua. If you're saying, oh, in this moment, there's an inherently existent moment of mind that is one with the I, and then there's another inherently existent moment of the mind, one with the I. He said those two would be like pot and pillar. It would be like two different mental continua. He gives the names Maitreya and Upagupta. And then that would mean that the action or cause set in motion by one would be experienced by someone else. It could be experienced by another person. If we think that the mind can exist in that way. So in various ways, the yogi tries to investigate and see that the mind cannot be inherently one with the aggregates. And so then comes the next possibility, which is the I inherently other than the aggregates? So then the job would be to move the mind and body aggregates out of the way and see if there is an I there. And the Panditas, Chandrakirti, Lama Tzong Khapa say that one is easier to refute. So the yogi investigates in that way, not one and not other. And the yogi who has purified and accumulated enough merit will eventually arrive he will first of all arrive at the non-finding of the I that he had been holding on to during his analysis, and he will have conviction that it doesn't exist, and there's no other way that such a inherently existent I can exist. So he will have the non-finding of that inherently existent I that he'd been holding on to and say, oh, it doesn't exist, doesn't exist. The inherently existent I that I had been grasping at is non-existent. So that would be his realization of the emptiness of the inherently existent I. So then one might say, well, does that mean the I doesn't exist? And the answer is no. The I exists, merely designated by name and conceptuality on the aggregates. So the yogi then sees how the I does conventionally exist. It exists merely designated by name and conceptuality on the aggregates. And it's completely conventionally acceptable for the I to exist in that way. And Lama Tzong Khapa, I believe in Lamrim Chenmo, says that's how the I conventionally exists, designated by name and conceptuality on the aggregates, not intrinsically existent. And Chandrakirti says, and I think he's quoting Sutra, but I don't know which one. Chandrakirti says, and Lama Tzong Khapa cites him as saying, just as a chariot is, the name chariot is designated independence, or just as a chariot is designated independence on the collection of its parts, in the same way, the self is designated on the aggregates. So the yogi has realized the lack of inherent existence of the I. He's realized the ultimate truth of the I, and then he realized how it exists conventionally, designated by name and conceptuality. I think that's the fourth point. Good luck with the meditation. But really, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's daily advice for how to meditate on emptiness is really good. That analysis of I am sitting. Why do I say I'm sitting? Right? I think that's really helpful. That's in the book Virtue and Reality. It's also available online on the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive, and Yangtze Rinpoche's book as well gives a nice explanation. So good luck.